Thank you for being here.
Delighted to be here.
Yes, and last but not least, we're going to be having Valence Timenyi, the Executive Director at the National Bank of Rwanda. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so today we're going to be exploring how Rwanda is accelerating inclusive finance and setting a new global standard. And I would like you to join me as we have this very insightful conversation. Now, today was the start of the summit or the conference, and it's going to be running through to the 30th of this month. Now, I would like to start off by hearing from each of you how the first day of the summit went in terms of financial inclusion, as well as providing opportunities and support for women-led businesses. I will start off with you, Mr. Jean Bosco.
So thank you very much. Today indeed is an excellent day, amazing, achievement in terms of serving women entrepreneurs across Rwanda. Today we really saw most financial institutions in Rwanda committing to support this cause and signing the code, the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Code, which really is a commitment to continue the journey. I think they have started, but really, once again, to showcase that they are very intentional to support women entrepreneurs, and not only them, but also us as ecosystem enablers, but also regulators and development partners, really to join our hands and see how we can close the financing gap for women entrepreneurs in Rwanda.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Inez Marie. As the CEO of the Financial Alliance for Women, you were also able to attend the first day of the conference. What does this mean for you in terms of the movement in creating a space where women can be able to thrive in finance, as well as have opportunities to be able to grow their businesses?
Thank you. Today we had 500 people from 59 countries. They represented the private sector, so many of them are the Financial Alliance for Women members, which are banks in emerging markets, but also in Europe and more, let's say, more advanced economies. And we gather every year to share best practice. And so we had our members in the room, we had regulators such as the National Bank of Rwanda, of course, that are co-hosting us, but also regulators from 30 other countries at least, who are all here to learn with each other about how to really advance women's financial inclusion. It was a fantastic day. We had such a good turnout, but also really high quality conversations.
Yes, thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Timenyi, as BNR is one of the co-hosts of this Financial Alliance for Women Summit, what does it mean for BNR to be a part of this summit that is bringing about financial inclusion and putting women at the forefront and having them be able to access equal opportunities?
Thank you very much. I think this day is a historical moment for BNR because financial inclusion is a key pillar and key focus area for the BNR strategic plan. So financing women, increasing financing women and women businesses is a key focus area. And today in the We Finance Code, we are taking a new approach that emphasizes on collaboration, emphasizes on being data-driven, but also emphasizes on being intentional in what we're going to do. So we saw commitments from 17 institutions, and the plan is to expand that coalition going forward. So we've embarked on a journey that we've started today, but a journey that we think will take us far in terms of enabling women to start businesses, to grow businesses, to innovate and create jobs. So it's a very interesting moment, and we look forward for the results.
Thank you very much. Now over to you. The We Finance Code is a national data-driven framework which is aimed at accelerating financial access and growth opportunities for women-led businesses. Now, if I may ask you, Mr. Jean Bosco, as a co-driver of the We Finance Code, how is access to finance Rwanda supporting financial service providers and ecosystem actors to be able to tailor their offerings toward these women-led businesses that are being showcased?
Yes, very good question. As a financial ecosystem facilitator and catalyst, we work with policymakers, regulators, and market actors, financial service providers that are innovating to support women entrepreneurs. And really working with them is first identifying the constraints that they face in serving this particular segment. And once we have identified those constraints, we first provide, and what we've seen is really lack of capacity to understand the needs, the specific needs of women entrepreneurs. So we provide technical assistance to the lenders to be able to design right policies, procedures, systems, and deploy tools, including digital tools that help them design and roll out innovative financial products for this particular segment. So that's one aspect of our support. So the second support is really what we call innovative grants. So we provide grants really that some of the times, most institutions will want actually to test new ideas with, more of, grant money or actually co-fund so that we test. And that really has gone into those financial institutions that have shown the will to support women entrepreneurs. And then we work on those aspects using the grants that we provide. And that's really on the supply side. But when you talk to financial institutions, they will tell you some of the women entrepreneurs, especially those in some of the sectors, like the agriculture sector and others, they'll tell you that they are risky and they want someone to share the risk. And we came in with the support of our development partners, Sweden, Denmark, MasterCard Foundation, to really provide portfolio guarantee cover, which goes up to 70%. And that really kind of, comes to unlock financing to women entrepreneurs that lack collateral or facing challenges of collateral. Another important aspect is really around investment readiness for these women entrepreneurs. Some of them haven't interacted with the financial institutions. Navigating that really is not easy, and you want them really to look good in the eyes of financiers. So that they go through what we call Terimbere MSME financing facility, which is an investment readiness facility. So we use experts to work with them, make sure that their business models are good, and then we link them with capital providers. And looking at the needs at their business cycles, you find that not everyone would need credit from a bank, but they might need equity from a private equity fund or a venture capitalist. So we try really to look at what they're doing and link them. Other important aspect is really to look at data. So work with the central bank, but also the industry associations, be it the Bankers Association, the Insurers Association, to look at the data that they have and use the data to really to understand the gap, but also to understand the constraints that women entrepreneurs face, and then design solutions with them to support the market actors. Last is really also data at the industry level. The regulator is providing supply-side data that is from transactions with the different regulated institutions. But really, we carry out a demand-side survey every 4 years to bring out what these women entrepreneurs say in terms of accessing or not accessing capital. And we bring that every 4 years to inform the innovators on where the gaps are and how they can address them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Ines Marie. Rwanda now joins over 59 countries, like you mentioned, in terms of implementing the We Finance Code. Now, this summit places Rwanda as a leader in gender intentional finance. What do you think makes Rwanda's approach particularly unique or promising on the global stage?
Well, I think Rwanda has, for several years now, at least, to my mind, at least 15 years, been a pioneer in women's financial inclusion in terms of the regulatory support and so on. And so there's a very, very good building blocks to build on. For instance, as Iachu mentioned, the data piece, that's super important, and the regulator has indeed been working on good data, both on the supply side as well as the demand side for a number of years. What this brings to the fore then is this notion of let's understand women entrepreneurs in particular, and that presents particular problems because most banks, for instance, would not be able to disaggregate their data and identify if they're a woman or a man-led business. So first of all, of course, you need a national definition of women-owned led that needs to be in a collaborative format to work with the financial services providers as well as the regulator to understand how do we define woman-owned led, and then you need to go into the system and identify those. So for the sole proprietors, it's pretty easy, right? Because they essentially, if you have a national ID card and you're an individual, you can identify the gender of the person. But once you get into higher, not higher, but businesses that are bigger with different owners, it's, you have to make a call on if it's women-owned or led. So then you get international benchmarks, such as some countries do 51%. It must be owned 51% by a female. Others say, no, let's lower the bar, 20%, but they need to have a major decision-making role in the business, as in CEO, CFO, something like that. And then you get into shareholders and how do you really, for the bigger businesses. So the data piece is no doubt is a lift that every country is doing in the 30 countries that are implementing it so far. And then this gives, once we have the data, we can understand the volumes of financing going to women. We can also understand their other behaviours, because to make the business case, which is the most important thing we need to do to convince the banks that this is a market you need to go after, it's not just the value that's created by lending to a woman, but it's also the fact and recognising that she is the chief purchasing officer inside the household. So you can not only offer her a loan, but she's also a great saver. And what is she saving for? The kids' education, the healthcare emergencies, all of those. So there's insurance, there's savings, there's credit. So there's a way of looking at that woman as a very viable consumer, which I know is a kind of an odd thing to kind of describe a woman like that. But if you're a CEO of a bank, that's how you think about your customers. So the data drives the business case in turn will inform and get the CEOs, with the help of the regulator and the nudge, to target this market effectively. And that's how the change happens.
And in your opinion, do you think that narrative is changing in terms of banks seeing the potential that can come out of investing in these women-led businesses?
Definitely. Like today we had, Rwanda is quite unique in the sense that you have quite a good representation of females at the CEO level in the banking industry. So that's a plus, because frankly there is an issue around it's the two genders are still, it's very hard for me to put my mind into a man's mind and vice versa. We still have this. So having women represented in the senior levels is super important, and it's also very unique about Rwanda. And I would say in Rwanda you also have very high representation of women across the government departments and the ministers. You also have a governor of the central bank, which there's only 3 in the entire continent that are women. So you have that. So that's super important. So from the top. And then we heard from the First Lady today. She gave an extraordinary speech. Everybody in the room was completely taken by this. And that's from really deep understanding of the issues, and absolutely fabulous, right? So you have the government, you have the central bank, you have the banks now, the CEOs, you have partners like IACHU and Access to Finance Rwanda. So you have this constellation of players all now motivated. Now we need to bring in more fintechs, get the technology in there, lower the transaction costs. There's a lot to be done. And it's a difficult, in some sense, the rural farmer is the hardest to reach and to bank. But you also have fantastic organizations that are working on that. So I think the unique thing about Rwanda is that you're very collaborative. You've got a stable economy. You have compared to many of your peer countries, a very functioning government. There's a lot of attractiveness there for the private sector, and what we need to do now is enable those people who are so capable to start and grow great businesses, and that's the challenge that the code is laying down to the sector. So I think it's a wonderful start.
Thank you very much. Definitely a great place to start. Over to you, Mr. Valens Chimenyi. Now, the governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, Soraya Hakuzirayemye, has described the We Finance Code as a blueprint for systemic reform. Now, what does systemic reform look like in practical terms for Rwanda's financial sector, especially concerning women-led MSMEs?
Well, thank you very much. I think the systemic reform is the approach we've been taking, because the idea of increasing financing to women businesses and allowing them to start businesses, grow, is not new to us. That's a goal that we've been having as a country, as a central bank, as a sector. What's new to us is the approach that we are taking, the approach that we are going to work together. Initially, every ecosystem player has been doing his own things. I mean, a financial service provider doing his or her own thing, ecosystem players like AFR doing their own things, the central bank doing their own thing. But the goal is, helping women start business, grow businesses, and get financed. So the new approach now is creating a coalition, and today we created a coalition of 17 CEOs of financial institutions and government. And this coalition is going to work together on addressing issues that women-owned businesses face from end to end. And these issues are many. They range from financial literacy, they range from issues to lack of mobility, lack of information, and many more. So working together is one thing. The other thing is being intentional. You can decide to do things or not to do it, but when you're intentional, then it means something else. The other thing is that we are going to be data-driven in what we do. And today we are saying, there's a narrative that women-owned businesses are very risky. And this narrative has never been, supported by data or information. It's just a narrative out there. And research from other countries or globally have shown actually that women-owned businesses are less risky compared to, men-owned businesses. So it's about using data to understand what women need. Maybe women don't need the products we're giving them, so why don't you use data and give them what they want? And data today is very important. Data is the gold of today, let me just call it. So, and we are happy that, digitization is at another level in Rwanda. We're talking about 80% of our people having access to mobile phones and access to mobile money at that level. So why don't we start using this data to know what women want? So that's a new approach, being data-driven, being intentional, but also collaboration, working together and measuring results.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Jean Bosco. There is a transition from a focus on access to a meaningful usage. How is Access to Finance Rwanda helping ensure that women entrepreneurs not only gain access but also leverage the financial service for actual growth and for there not to be any stagnation?
So thank you. Indeed, when you look at the first step, the initial step of interacting with the financial sector is really opening an account, which is like your key to the financial sector. But really, what we have seen is that you find most women entrepreneurs having an account and transacting. And then they don't take a next step of using other financial services that with the bank or any financial institution. And yet we know actually once all the business actually is able to really accommodate a credit or a loan, And then that's how actually you start growing, because you use it for the right cause, and you are able to finance, expansion of your business. Now, what we are saying is that, as long as there's a business case for growth for that particular enterprise that is women-owned or women-led, it's very important that women start exploring other financial services. So moving from that access to usage of, a range of financial products and services. And I'm saying this from perspective of lending, a loan to expand the business, but also insurance to cover any risks that are in the business, but also even investment products, because that also can be a very good way of managing your cash flows as you actually try to make your business productive. And what we've seen, which is very important, is that, depending on the growth cycle that you are at as a business, women-owned or led, it's very important that you understand that at this stage, because they want this growth, I should actually access this type of capital. And that's what we do with them, to really first to map their growth plan and showcase it through the investment readiness facility. And then once we have diagnosed and shown the pathway to really growth, then they're able to say, probably I need equity rather than debt from a bank. And then from there, we are saying, well, then you should actually talk to this particular financier, not the other one. And from there, they start using capital that is, or financial products and services that are really well aligned with the needs of the business and their growth plan. And that's how they become more productive, and that's how actually they expand operations, but also create more fulfilling and dignified employment,
yes.
which is very critical.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes the financial literacy amongst these women may vary. It may not be the same as they are trying to navigate and enter this market. How are you able to figure out how to help these women?
That's a very excellent question. Indeed, women are not same. So I think there's a very high level of segmentation that is needed. And, from urban to rural, educated, non-educated, peri-urban, all of those, the different, sectors of the economy, so they have different opportunities and challenges.
Yeah.
So understanding them is the first actually step. And when you have understood them, you know which actually tools you deploy and which approach you take in supporting them. So I've seen different innovators in the market and outside, Rwanda, where actually if you have a woman entrepreneur running a small business and they can't read, actually you put a chat box and they get messages on audio. They can actually listen on the audio and still get the message about what they need to do. But also, we bring them into procedures. But also something which probably we have done wrong is to feel like the entrepreneur, the woman entrepreneur, will be the the chief HR officer, will be the chief finance officer, will be the chief strategy officer. So I think it's very important to know that entrepreneurs are good at first identifying a need and looking for a product or a solution to address the need, and be able to sustain the solution and serve better the clientele.
Yeah.
That's what they are good at. So now what we are saying is, at some point we need to create shared services where the entrepreneur focuses on what they do best, and then all those other support functions, managing the staff, managing finances, is done by professionals that know, because they are serving also many women entrepreneurs. The cost will be very low per entrepreneur. Then they focus on what they do best and what they know best, because they're entrepreneurs, not really making them HR managers.
Yeah.
So I think that really works, even for those that really don't have higher levels of education. So they still get support, and they're sure that they're doing the right thing. Even tax, same. I mean, they can navigate through all these tax legislation that is there. So they need someone really who is an expert there to guide them as they focus on growing the business.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Ines Marie. Rwanda is joining 30 and above countries that are implementing the We Finance Code. Now, what lessons or successful strategies do you hope that Rwanda can be able to take or adopt from these countries that have already had the We Finance Code implementation?
Thank you. Great question. So I think to build on what has already been built today, which is the coalition, which has multiple stakeholders. So that's also happening in other countries. I think to Iachu's point, it's really important to segment the market. Okay, so we're 51% of the population globally, women, but of course we're all very different. So segmentation is very, very important in order, particularly in business, because different segments have different needs. So as you kind of go up in revenue size and you're increasingly formalized, your needs for non-financial services are quite different. So that segmentation, for instance, if you look at the United Kingdom, where this code originated, actually the idea, that segmentation means that they have strategies for different levels of entrepreneurs, but they also have different types of financing. So if you look at, you have the debt financing from the banks, the microfinance organizations, those kinds of ones. Then you have also fintechs coming in that are actually applying specific technologies to basically do things like supplier finance and so on. So there's ways of kind of picking out different parts of the financing problem. And then you also have equity. And early stage equity is like, for instance, angel investing, where you're basically getting an entrepreneur to invest in another entrepreneur that's high growth. That relationship is very interesting because you're also getting a mentoring relationship. So segmenting and looking at that market is super important, and I think Rwanda can invest some time and energy in that, and I think Iachu has articulated some of those segments just now. And then I think because you already have the CEOs involved, it's really rolling up the sleeves and getting the work done, because it's not like we don't know how to do this, it's that we need them to do it. Okay, so we also need to acknowledge that there hasn't been enough action, and I would say that is definitely a global problem. That is not a Rwandan problem. Okay, so we need the banks to take themselves more seriously in terms of financing SMEs. And one of the problems we see in many emerging markets is that banks are lending to the government. They're buying T-bonds. They're using depositors, the people's deposits, to buy T-bonds, which are very safe and secure, and they give a high return. And that is crowding out. They're not lending then to SMEs. So that's a problem in many countries, and that requires a more sophisticated capital markets, and it requires institutional investors to come in. So there's a lot of elements in this ecosystem that has to make it work. That said, I do think there are amazing enterprise support organizations here as well that are training, doing very, very kind of low transaction cost training for the women. So women don't want to sit in classrooms. Those days are gone, right? They've already been to school. If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in the marketplace, I really don't want to learn accounting in a classroom. What I really need is, how adults learn is we learn by experience and by doing.
True.
So if you can do something on a mobile phone which gives you a nudge to save for this reason, that, and remember, 10% of your income you should be saving, the behavior starts changing. Teaching women a little bit, I think it's important, about taking on debt, because what women do is they generally use their savings to invest in a business, but that limits your growth. So they need to be a little bit oriented towards this idea of taking on some debt. It's not the worst thing in the world. It'll help you grow your business. So they're very cautious anyway, so let's just give them some of that kinds of financial education and not think that they have to educate about everything, because as Iachu said, they're entrepreneurs. They know very well how to manage their business, so it's just a question of timely, relevant information that can really move them that bit further.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And back to you, Mr. Valens. as the National Bank of Rwanda is a co-host in the Financial Alliance for Women Summit, how will the National Bank of Rwanda ensure accountability and compliance from financial institutions that will be able to sign the We Finance Code, especially in terms of gender disaggregated data reporting?
You're very correct. Well, commitment, if it's not followed by accountability and self-evaluation, it becomes business as usual. You don't achieve the results. And what you can't measure, you can't improve. So what we saw today is commitments, which is a starting point. And the next steps would be accountability. And we've come to learn as a country that, accountability is very key. Accountability in governance. We've seen the results in different, sectors of our economy. So at the central bank in Rwanda, by signing the code today, I think we started from a very strong foundation, and the World Bank team that has been supporting us in this initiative, they were amazed by the data system that we've already established. I have to tell you that 6 years ago, the central bank deployed a SupTech solution, an electronic data house, that links to every financial service provider and even other stakeholders like Rwanda Revenue Authority, and we were able to get data to a bigger extent on real time. So, and we've created above that layer of electronic data house a financial inclusion dashboard. So I can sit in my office today and know how many women were able to open an account in the last 2 days, or even the last 1 day. I can sit in my office today, use that dashboard to know how many women across the ecosystem were able to borrow in the last week, in the last 2 days. So that's a very good foundation that other countries that piloted actually didn't have. So, and actually that data is sexy disaggregated. So what we are trying to do, and that's what Inez was saying, how do we move another step to defining women-owned businesses compared to male-owned businesses? And we have to have a common definition. Is it by shareholding? And we are coming to that point. So by having that system in place, I think it gives us a very strong foundation to do a self-evaluation. And, there are things that will form the coalition. And the coalition will be a living coalition where people will sit in the room, have regular meetings, and evaluate their performance compared to the targets, their actions. And there will be evaluation at the individual institution basis. You committed this target, quantitative target, but also qualitative target. You committed that you're going to increase the number of women borrowers in your institution from this level. How far have you gone? And you don't want to be the last in class. Okay? So from the qualitative point of view, of course, that's why we come in. There's a couple of reforms that we'll be doing as a central bank, but also Minicom and other players. But I have to say that, we started off with 17 institutions, but the plan is to enlarge this coalition to as much as we can. We're hearing from Nigeria today that actually they have coalition members of 90. 90 members. Of course, Nigeria is big, but we can increase from 17 to a bigger number. But having that coalition do a self-evaluation, of course, it's not name and shame, but it's rather committing and, standing up and saying, I achieved this, I've not achieved this. So that creates some pressure even on you as you're sitting in a club of, institutions that committed. You have to deliver. So that's why we think, we are starting from a very strong foundation in terms of data system, but also having a coalition that we can, the central bank, we're assuming the role of a champion at this starting phase, but also data aggregation. So we'll be aggregating data from these financial service providers that have committed today, and we'll be presenting this aggregated data at the coalition forums to assess the progress, but also have a mandate to share these numbers at the global level. The World Bank, the We Finance Secretariat, the OECD, there's going to be a report at the global level on how countries are performing, because this is a global initiative. So I think we are starting off well in terms of having necessary foundations for accountability and self-evaluation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Iyachu. Even though there is a significant growth in terms of bridging the gender equity gap in terms of financial inclusion, there is still a 4% gap in favor of men. Now, how is Access to Finance Rwanda working to close this gap through digital financial services and as well as non-traditional channels?
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, we have been seeing the financial inclusion gap, gender gap, narrowing over time. But still, the 4% that we have is still a challenge. We need to really close it as soon as possible. And first, I would commend actually the fact that the sector is tracking that, because we have data every 4 years to track the progress we have made, to understand the challenges that are remaining and how we address them. Now, digital financial services really present an opportunity in closing that gap, because when you look at mobile penetration, even internet penetration, they're increasing every day. And you find that even those women in rural areas that are either working on the farms or running small businesses, they have phones. So how do we actually leverage that channel to provide more financial services to them? And what we've seen, in fact, from 2020 to 2024, one of the major contributors of, closing the financial exclusion gap was actually mobile money. But we all know that mobile money is all about transfer of funds and payments. And what we are lacking actually is more financial solutions on that particular channel. So we want to see more credit channeled through the phone and provided by such providers that are providing payments. We want to see insurance, policies being delivered on the phone. Want to see investment products that are really channeled through the same channel that majority is using. And for that to happen, really, it's not, first, we have data that is really backed by the MNOs, and that data, transaction data, first is a beginning point actually to score all these users and be able to learn. But we say that it's not enough, because transaction of one financial institution, of one financial service provider, are not enough. So if you followed, this week the government passed a policy which is on data sharing. And to me, that's really a great opportunity in the financial sector, because public organizations, public institutions are willing to share data. And what we are working on with the central bank, the Ministry of ICT and Innovation, RISA, is actually to create what we call unified lending interface. So where data are pulled into one interface, and any innovator can actually access the data about the person. And this data, in fact, the data that is transaction data, do not belong to the supply of the financial services. Those are your data. So as long as you can consent and your data is protected and consent to share it with any innovator who wants to serve you, you are allowed to do that, because you want to get a better pricing, you want to get better products. And when that comes, and I think that's something that should come soon, then we see actually innovation from fintechs, from even the existing banks. They have really invested a lot in the digital platforms, and we see any other innovators within the space to come and use the data, innovate, and provide financial services to these women entrepreneurs and close the gap as soon as possible. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Inez Marie. You've emphasized the importance of data transparency and gender-intelligent solutions. Now, in practical terms, what does gender-intentional product development look like, and how do you guide financial institutions to be able to adopt this approach?
Great question. So when we say gender intelligent, what we mean is that you're basically looking at this in a lens that you understand the experience of the woman going through the system. So if you think about digital financial services, you have what you could describe as a sales funnel. So the initial part of the sales funnel is awareness. So how do you establish, it's from awareness to onboarding, to actually taking out a loan, to then, if it's a lending situation, to then taking more products and being a repeat customer. And so if you just aggregate your data at each stage of the funnel, you can understand why women, for instance, are only 25% that are aware of this service. And then when they go to onboarding, how come that drops to 10% and then it goes through, right? So you're basically disaggregating the data along the funnel. And common problems that you see with women, first of all, awareness. So this means that the digital financial services provider, or indeed the bank or MFI, isn't really in the market where they are. It's not really communicating and building trust, because women aren't going to go onto a digital platform unless they actually trust it. Okay, nobody's showing up with a fintech product that you've never heard about. Most people think about it yourselves. Anybody, if a bank approaches you, all you think about is fees, you know, what do they want out of it? Kind of in a way. So, you know, but you can analyze this with data. So awareness. So how do you build trust? Trust has to be a combination of technology and touch. For a woman, she needs to trust the organization to buy the product. You need a human being there to explain this product to her, perhaps, or to make her more comfortable. And then when it comes to onboarding, so I think this is quite an interesting thing, because it gives this particular example. There was a fintech in Mexico that it was a lender through digital financial services. The regulator, what they noticed was that when it came to the onboarding, which is when you basically go through the application, and right at the bottom you have to click agree, right, that you've read the terms and conditions.
Yeah.
So what happened was the men just went down to the bottom and clicked. And the women were reading everything, and then well, they couldn't even get through it. There was so much stuff.
Information.
Right? The regulator, I'm not pointing at Valens here, but the regulator in Mexico had mandated this. And so what happened was, when the fintech had disaggregated the data and looked at this, said, well, hold on, they're all dropping out here, and so let's change the form. So they changed it, made it faster, and actually we don't need to know all that information with this legalese that nobody even understands. Just click the button. Or when it comes to the algorithm, when it comes to the credit lending process, it's interesting that in the algorithms have bias within them, because what the algorithm does is, many credit algorithms, it basically says if you've got a higher education, if you live in a certain geography, if you've got a particular kind of income, you get scored higher. So because women are structurally disadvantaged, often they have less education. I'm not saying every woman, but on average, or they have a lower income, which is definitely more common. They actually end up having to pay more for the loan because it's got structural biases within it. So therefore, if you look at your algorithms and you understand the bias, it's not just about gender, by the way, it's about any kind of demographic characteristic that could potentially be biased against you. So unpacking and de-biasing the algorithm is super important. So I suppose the main point I'm trying to say is that you can understand the challenges by sex disaggregating the data, whether it's demand side or supply side, and really getting all those intelligent people that work in these institutions to sit around and say to themselves, you know what, let's get more women through this funnel. How do we do that? Well, let's look at the data, and what does it tell us?
True, and you did speak about women being able to trust some of the things that they have to meet with in the whole process. And how can different institutions or financial institutions be able to gain the trust of these women-led businesses?
It's all about empathy, listening. You know, you need to train the sales force, the relationship managers. We've actually, this has been done in some of the other countries, in many other countries really, and certainly in our network. The sales force, so traditionally banks are about selling products. That's what they are measured by, products per customer, how many products, volumes. But actually they need to become customer-centric, which means flipping the whole equation and talking to the customers. Now, what it means to sell to a woman and to a man is different. Women take time to make decisions. So if a woman comes into a branch and says, you know, I'd like, you know, a loan, but actually my kid, she's sick and this and that, you know, you have to sit there, listen to them, understand what their problems are. They're not going to, just buy a product. What they need is a relationship with the institution. They need a relationship manager that listens, that has empathy, that shows them some options, but really understands where they're coming from. And the sales process may take longer. That's okay, because once she comes in and she's served well, she's very loyal.
Sure.
Remember, she hasn't been served before. So she's going to tell, on average, in some countries, a woman who's served well will tell 9 other women, but a woman who's served badly will tell 42 other women. Okay?
Yeah.
So serving her well is really a good, effective way of word-of-mouth marketing. And so that Net Promoter Score is really, really important.
Yeah, very important to be intentional in terms of listening to the women and understanding what they need to be able to serve them.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Valens. Rwanda has made significant strides in formal financial inclusion, 92% according to the 2024 FinScope survey. Now, what are the next steps towards moving from having the access but also to meaningful usage, particularly for women entrepreneurs?
Look, at 92% formal access, that's close to universal access. Actually, we're discussing in our next generation of financial inclusion agenda. I think we should drop the word access and focus more on the usage, because that's universal access. And this thanks to mobile money that enabled us to leapfrog the access to accounts, and now everyone has, at least people have a transaction account, including the women that we're talking about. So how do we move from access to usage? And this is very important, because we talk about financial inclusion because it's an end in itself, because we believe that access to finance and usage of financial service, access to credit, to insurance, to pension, is a way of creating, businesses, creating jobs, and some other socioeconomic outcomes. So unless people start using, borrowing and paying, getting insurance to manage their risks, then we're halfway. We've not achieved our goal. So our next generation of financial inclusion reforms are going to be on the usage. And usage is, even the Y Finance Code that we're talking about today here, it's more on the usage, but particularly focusing on women businesses. So there are a couple of things, and the institutions that signed the code today, the 17 institutions, I think they are committing on actions on driving usage. And I believe the highlights of the interventions, they're going to be financial education, very key. Education on business management. How do we train these women to design bankable projects? That's very important. The other thing, very important, how do we start building the usage of alternative data in credit scoring? I mean, today traditional banking emphasizes much on audited financial statements. And remember, 90% of our businesses are working as small or medium, and most of them even informal sector. So it's injustice to ask them about audited financial statements. Or if you don't ask for audited financial statements, you ask for a credit reference bureau, report, CRB report. And CRB report is about your history of borrowing and paying. Now, here I am, I'm an SME, I'm a woman, I'm trading, I have my fruit shop for fruits and vegetables. I've never borrowed, but I trade every day. So you're missing out on me because your focus is on audited financial statements or credit reference bureau reports. But I use my mobile wallet to send and receive money every day, to make payments. How about you use this alternative data and know my credit worthiness, my ability to pay? So how do we drive the use of alternative data in credit scoring? That's very key. Number 3, our financial institutions should start thinking about women-centric products, not gender-neutral products, because women are different from men. Women face specific challenges. An example is mobility. Men are mobile, they move. Women, because of home responsibilities, they're not mobile as men. And mobility is linked to access to information. So how do we use technology, leverage technology, to provide financial services that find a woman where she is, because she's not mobile as a man? So it's quite a long list of interventions, and I believe within this coalition, there's going to be commitments across each of those, and we're going to achieve access that we want, usage that we want.
Usage, not access.
Yes,
Thank you very much. So as we kind of draw closer to the end of the conversation, Inez, you were able to mention what the First Lady said in her remarkable remarks. She talked about and emphasized that women's access to finance should not be viewed as charity, but as a necessity to achieve economic growth. Now, we have 2 more days left for the Financial Alliance Summit. What are you in expectance for the next few days, and what do you hope to achieve that will come out of this summit in terms of practicalness and the importance of sustainability from the conversations that will be had? We'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, that was a powerful statement from the High Excellency, the First Lady. Really, I think we fully agree. In fact, the entire day we're reflecting on really that statement in different conversations. And indeed, we cannot afford to exclude, more than 50% of the population, from accessing financial services. And what I see, from, the remaining 2 days, clearly, there is renewed commitment, but also, I think, which is very important, to mention, the Financial Alliance for Women Summit really brings together different practitioners, and they share, what is working and not working, models that are working in other markets, and then we see exactly what can be customized within and address the challenges that we face. And just to ponder on that particular aspect of really serving women entrepreneurs, I think we need really a paradigm shift kind of. Why? Because we still, yes, there's commitment from the providers of financial services. There's commitment from policymakers, regulators, and development community to support women entrepreneurs to be credit-worthy or, being investment-ready. And then you find that really within the society we still have some few negative social and cultural norms that really still also holding back these women entrepreneurs. And I think it's very important that we go through a journey of transformation in terms of mindset to understand that women actually are key contributors to the growth that we need and jobs creation in this market and other African, geographies. And once all of us, even those gatekeepers of those negative social norms, have understood it, really we'll be kind of, opening a way to actually the female economy to flourish and contribute more. And that's what I want to see going forward. And I think the commitments today really will drive that.
Thank you very much. Inez Murray, in a few seconds, any last words as we are to the women out there in honor of the Financial Alliance for Women Summit, something that they would like to hear, woman to woman?
To the women in Rwanda, we respect you. We know how much work you do. We know you never sleep. We know you get up before dawn and you go to bed late at night. You're looking after your kids, you're building businesses, you're doing a lot. I would say to the men of Rwanda to do more of the household tasks so that you can ease the... It's not just Rwandan men, it's everywhere, right? If you look at the number of hours that women are working, they're working longer hours in every country in the world, right? So a little bit more cooperation on the household level would enable more women to do more in the business. But in terms of the summit, we're going to deepen the know-how, we're sharing the learning across different countries. We have a fantastic lineup of content. And I just hope that it stimulates and catalyses and inspires more action.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, in a few seconds, any last words as we conclude the show?
I think we've started a journey of working together to increase the financing to women businesses. And it's a journey that we're going to complete with outcomes, with targets achieved. So we want numbers increasing. We want more women getting, financing. We want women starting businesses, growing businesses, innovating. And we are committed to this, we're committed to a set of actions, and I know the future is very good. I have to tell any woman that is watching me that, we are very deliberate on supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, tonight's conversation has made one thing clear. Rwanda is not just hosting the Financial Alliance for Women Summit, it's also leading a global shift towards inclusive finance. From policy to practice, the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Code is set to change how financial institutions serve women-led businesses. A special thank you to our guests. Inez Marie, thank you so much for being here. Jean Bosco Yachip, thank you very much for being here. And Valensky Menyi, once again, thank you for sharing your insights and contributing to the change. And once again, I'm your host, Martina Avera. Thank you for watching. And up until next time, stay safe, continue to join in on the conversation, and let's continue to bring these conversations to light. And once again, have a great night. Thank you.
Application ya RBA yahageze urayibona ute?